Back with us this week, we have Brother Ghatikara Loo to share on Majjhima Nikaya 70 Kitagiri Sutta, a look at kinds of enlightened beings. Over to you, Brother Loo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Terence. Yeah, and a very good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. I'm indeed very happy, that I'm able to share the Dhamma with you again this morning. So before we begin with today's Dhamma discussion and sharing, let us first of all put our palms together in Anjali, pay our deepest and highest, homage and gratitude, to the Buddha, the Blessed One, whom through his great effort and sacrifice, he has rediscovered the path to liberation, and that has enabled us to practice the true Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, very good morning again, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Okay, so for the Dhamma discussion today, I've actually selected this sutta, which is extracted from the Majjhima Nikaya. And this is the collection of the middle length discourses delivered by the Blessed One. And this is actually Sutta number 70 from Majjhima Nikaya. And this entitled the sutta is Kitagiri Sutta. Okay, so as you can see, Kitagiri means, it must be a sutta, that relates to certain events, of certain significant discourses given by the Buddha at this particular village, which is actually Kitagiri, in India. I believe it's actually in the Kosalan kingdom. So, yeah, and I've selected this sutta, because just give me 1 second. Let me just. Okay, I've selected this sutta, because this sutta, is actually a very important sutta, especially for practitioners like us, Buddhists. Let's make sure. Okay. Because this sutta itself actually enumerates the different types or different kinds of enlightened beings, and this were actually explained in quite detail by the Buddha in this discourse itself, and this, of course, is a very important point, that we should consider because as in our spiritual path, in our practice of the Dhamma, our ultimate goal is actually for us to achieve enlightenment, right? And this, of course, is achieved, through the attainment of either Nibbana or the Paranibbana, which is the final Nibbana, and and um and as you can see, in this path that we're traveling, towards to, right, we need to actually be sure, exactly what our destination is, right? It's very much like before you actually, embark on a journey to a particular destination, you need to know exactly where you're traveling. So in this case, since we're actually, in a way, focusing, and directing, our effort and attention towards this spiritual path that's actually laid down, so beautifully by the Blessed One. So we actually need to know exactly, what is this destination, that we are looking at, when we achieve, say, arahantship, and how about the intermediate, enlightenment, where you attain ariyas, right? But of course, before you become an arahant, there are of course intermediate stages, of enlightenment as well, as we can see, from, when you actually become a sotapanna, then of course in sakadagami, anagami, all the way to arahantship. So we actually need to know exactly what are the types of these enlightened beings, and how do we actually differentiate, because this is very important, because you actually have a bearing in terms of how we practice, the Dhamma, and how we actually steer, our meditation towards that direction. And it actually very much depends on your temperaments as well as your strengths. I would say your forte, right? And so we need to be clear, otherwise, if we actually have whole misconceptions about these different kinds of enlightened beings, and then, and once we have some misunderstandings and misguided notions about these enlightened beings, then it will also, in a way, affect our way we practice. So it's actually not just for common knowledge, okay? I know these different types of arahants, and I know these different areas. It's not just book knowledge per se, but we need to know the underlying important implications, why we actually need to understand, these various types, of enlightenment as you travel, through the different stages of enlightenment. Say, for example, from the time, where there's breakthrough to the Dhamma, as well we can see the Abhisamanya, when there's an arising of the Dhamma eye, with the attainment of Sotapatti, right? When it becomes a stream enterer, a Sotapanna, all the way, and of course, with this, of course, you actually uproot the three factors, of Sakaya Ditti, identity view, the doubt about the Buddha's teachings, and also Silabata Paramasa. Remember the three lower factors that you actually uproot when you become a Sotapanna, and all the way, up to Arahantship, when you're able to uproot, the five higher factors, the craving for form world, craving for formless world, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance, right? If I get them correct. So these are the five higher factors that you eradicate, uproot once you become an arahant. So from the time where the adama arises in you, until you actually uproot the five higher factors, so that itself, that journey itself, we need to actually understand how do we actually steer, or rather tailor our meditation practice, or our practice of the Dhamma, depending on our strengths and our forte. So that itself is something that's very important. So this sutta itself is very important, and it's also quite interesting to me, So this MN70, is something that we should read and understand, and understand what the Buddha is trying to tell us in terms of different kinds of enlightened beings, because as you know, in the current Buddhist fraternity we have, the Buddhist community, in a way, we seem to be rather fragmented, right, when it comes to agreeing, on the path to liberation, as it is, we have early Buddhism, and on top of that, we have Theravada, which is actually, which may have slight variations from early Buddhism, even within our so-called Theravada family, we already have a difference in terms of the interpretation of the sutta. Because some actually believe the Abhidhamma is the primary text, and it actually has precedence over sutta, so that seems to be held by certain Theravada traditions, even though it's under Theravada family, So we have got this early Buddhism and Theravada, and of course we have Mahayana and Tibetan, Buddhism, which of course, it has evolved in terms of the way that the different ways that Dhamma is actually interpreted. So if you can, if you actually look at this in terms of the different ways, that Dhamma has evolved, many of us are actually perplexed, right? And rather a bit hesitant, and also a bit confused, like really exactly, how should we practice, um, and uh, and really, how many types of arahants are there actually, because we hear so many of this arahants, some say bodhisattvas and all this, so a lot of people are actually confused, right? So that's why we need to be very clear, Of course, with this sutta itself, I do have some interesting observations. Like, for example, even within the Theravada family itself, we talk about arahants. Of course, some actually make reference to the commentaries, and they say, in these commentaries, there's actually this reference made to what we call the dry eye arahant, dry vision arahant. I'm not sure whether you've heard of it. Dry vision arahant, which means arahants who can actually become uproot all the factors, the 10 factors, and become arahant without using jhana. I'm not sure whether I'm sure most of you have actually heard about that. The dry eye arahant, the sukha vipassaka, they call it the sukha vipassaka, because jhana is actually like a lubricant, it actually facilitates and lubricates your meditation practice. It provides a composure for you to see the five aggregates in terms of non-self, in terms of impermanence and dukkha, unsatisfactory. So jhana is like a lubricant, so some actually make reference to this commentary and say, there's this dry eye arahant. So, we don't actually need to have jhana, so we can just go straight into vipassana, and some even actually denigrate samatha practice. They say that, oh, samatha practice is actually not helpful. They only lead you to rebirth in the Brahma world. It doesn't lead to wisdom, and after that you come back, and then you need to go through, the suffering in the woeful plains again. So they say samatha is actually not essential. I just go deep dive into vipassana and don't waste any more time. And so therefore samatha is superfluous. It's not necessary. So I just concentrate on vipassana itself. And that's it. Even though the Buddha, in the sutta, I think in Grand Nikaya, book number 4, about the yoke together, the Buddha already, no, sorry, Venerable Ananda already mentions that, whoever who declares arahantship, actually uh, uh, um, uh, announce that, they attain arahantship, either from by vipassana first, then samatha, or samatha then vipassana. So but they disregard that sutta, and say, oh, actually, is samatha is not necessary. So that's one point in terms of dry eye arahant. And then the second notion, interesting observation I make, of course, is that many people actually hold the notion that arahants, must have psychic powers. If you don't have psychic powers, like for example, walking on the water, solid land, or you can actually dive into ground like as though it's water. You can walk through past walls, or you can actually go through mountains as though it is actually it's actually there's no solid there, no form there, and you can fly to the Brahma world, or you can actually hold the moon in your hand, or you can read people's mind. You have the psychic ability to read people's mind, and you're able to see the past lives of others, or where they're reborn. If you don't have these psychic powers, then they say it is not the real thing. You're not an arahant, you're not a real arahant. So they say, yeah, if you, I want to see your psychic power to prove that you're an arahant. So is that really true, that all arahants must have psychic power? That's the second thing we need to also establish, right? Most people will actually say that if you because arahant, they believe they can only attain arahantship, if you attain the four jhana, the fourth jhana, which also is also wrong. I mean, not correct. If you actually look at jhana sutta itself, you can actually become arahant, just if just by contemplating, the five aggregates, using the first jhana, that itself is sufficient. So, but of course, most people actually have this notion that, to become arahant, you must have the fourth jhana, and therefore, you must have the psychic power. If you don't have psychic power, then you are not the real arahant, and it's not the real thing. so so that is another popular notion about arahant. And then the third point also I want to highlight is in terms of this word kaya, body, which is translated by a lot of Buddhist scholars as body, especially like, for example, the meditation taught by the Blessed One, which is Kaya Gata Sati. Kaya Gata Sati, if you actually look at this Anguttara Nikaya Book of Wands, the Buddha says, if you actually practice this Kaya Gata Sati, you can actually become an arahant, in this very lifetime, or even any of the 4 stages of sainthood, of Arya ship. You can actually, if you practice Kaya Gata Sati, it brings abundant of benefits, abundant of merits, and you're able to actually uproot, and uh, uproot all the kilesas, and then uproot ignorance as well, and you're able to penetrate into the truth, by using wisdom, and able to achieve, any of the 4 stages of enlightenment just by practice Kaya Gata Sati, So a lot of Buddhist scholars translate Kaya, the word Kaya Gata Sati. Kaya means a body, So a lot of translations actually then make reference to meditation that's directed towards the body. So if you read this MN70, then you'll find actually kaya, the meaning is not restricted to just body. Kaya can also, mean other than body itself, which can also mean uh other than body. For example, it can also mean yourself or the mind. So that is something that we need to also try to get some light, from this MN70 itself, and to do some investigative work, uh, like just trying to, investigate, and then try to evaluate, from this sutta itself exactly, is it really true that kaya can just mean body, So a lot of Buddhist scholars translate as meditation directed towards the body. So a lot of people say, oh, you practice um uh, body means, rising, falling of the abdomen, or maybe anapanasati, just by practicing this alone, just observe the breath, observe the body rising and falling, and that itself, will actually bring the different stages of enlightenment, like what the Buddha mentions in Kaya Sati. But is that really true? If that's true, then it's also not consistent with what the Buddha says, about uh, like the mind is actually the forerunner of all things, the mind that's actually not safeguarded, well guarded, is actually like a poorly thatched roof, right? And the Buddha says in this Ati Yoko Pariyara Sutta, that you need to watch, or if you can watch your mind, then you become an arhat in this very lifetime. So is it really true that just by watching the body itself, that you can become any of the Aryas, So that's also another thing we need to establish. What's the underlying meaning of kaya, So to proceed with our discussion, let me just refer you to the sutta itself. Let me quickly share with you in terms of this MN70, which is actually a very interesting sutta. Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 70, of course, it says at Kitagiri, and of course, this uh, it records, like I said, is a discourse, that was actually given by the Buddha in this Kasi town in Kitagiri itself, this sutta actually started by saying, at one time, the Buddha, the Blessed One, was wandering in the Kasi country, together with a large sangha of bhikkhus, the Buddha then actually told the bhikkhus, bhikkhus, I abstain from eating at night, By doing so, I'm free from illness and affliction, lightness, strength, and a comfortable abiding, So before this, what happened was the monks, there was no requirement for them to observe the that you should not actually take, uh, solid food, or non-allowable food and drinks, after the solar noon, uh, that is, of course, currently is actually being observed, as part of the monks' monastic rules. Even in the eight precepts itself, we actually practice this, that after the solar noon, we do not actually take food, or non-allowable, beverage, and we actually strictly observe this, after the solar noon, when the sun is actually at the highest point in the sky, right? So prior to this, the monks did not actually have to observe this, But then, the Buddha then introduced, that actually then made a decree to the bhikkhus, that that going forth, that the monks, shall not actually shall abstain from eating, after at the inappropriate times, which is after the solar noon, So the Buddha says, because of this, I'm free from illness, free from affliction, and I feel very light, and I have strength, and I'm and I have comfortable abiding, So he actually then told the monks that you too will be freed from illness and affliction, and if you actually follow this as well, and all the monks said yes, Bhante, they replied and they followed this, Then, as the Blessed One was wandering in stages in Kasi, they eventually arrived at a Kasi town called Kitagiri, right? And he lived in this Kasi town, Kitagiri. In this Kasi, Kasi, is a town that's famous for the fine cloth, right? Kasi cloth, and there is this uh, town in Kasi itself, which is called Kitagiri, So, and, the plot thickens, So what happens is now on that occasion, the bhikkhus, led by this Asaji and Puna Basuka, these two monks, these two bhikkhus, were also residing at Kitagiri, Then a number of the bhikkhus told them, so friends, the Blessed One and the Sangha of bhikkhus now abstain from eating at night. When you say at night, means after the solar noon, you don't take any meals after solar noon. So come friends, abstain from eating at night. By so doing, you too will be free from illness and affliction, and you feel lighter, you feel stronger, and you have a comfortable abiding, But when this was said, this Asaji, the bhikkhus, this group of bhikkhus, led by this Asaji and Punabasuka, told these bhikkhus that, friends, we eat in the evening, in the morning, in the day, outside the proper time, By so doing, we are also free from illness. Right? It doesn't mean that they are arguing this way like that. It doesn't mean that I have to actually fast, right? And abstain from eating, after the solar noon. For me to be well, and free from illness, right? Even though I'm eating 3 meals a day or so, I'm feeling okay, I'm feeling fine. So why should we abandon a benefit visible here and now to pursue a benefit to be achieved at the time in future? So this group of monks led by this Asaji and Punabasuka is actually feeling a bit unhappy. Why should we fast at night? I mean, right now, if I eat 3 meals or so, I feel okay. Why should I actually fast? And this benefit that the Buddha speaks about, having a stronger, stronger body, feeling lighter, all these benefits are actually in the future, and but right now, before my very eyes, I already see this benefit. So it's like the English saying goes, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. Right? It's like, why should I actually do something that I'm not sure whether, by fasting I'll feel better, when I'm right now, I'm really uh I'm really feeling so fine, by having 3 meals. So we shall eat in the evening, in the morning, in the day, outside the proper time. So this group of monks led by this Asaji and Punabasuka sort of like defied the Buddha, and said, no, we will continue to eat 3 meals, regardless of what was decreed, So uh, so the bhikkhus were unable to convince this group of monks, so no choice, I have to go back to the big boss, So they went back to Buddha, the Blessed One. So after paying homage to him, they told the Buddha, Bante, since we were unable to convince the bhikkhus led by Asaji and Punabasuka, we need to report this, we need to escalate to the boss, right? If you cannot resolve already, you need to escalate to the boss. So then the Buddha addressed the bhikkhus. Okay, come, bhikkhu, tell the bhikkhus led by this Asaji and Punabasuka in my name that the teacher calls them. So the Buddha, summons them, okay. And and the Buddha will not be very kind to this the so-called recalcitrants, So and of course they say, oh yes, um so they actually So actually, then they, of course, they informed this bhikkhus lah, this Saji and Punabasuka, and told them, the teacher calls you, friends, these two Asaji, these two leaders of the renegade group lah. So then they replied, yes, friend, so they went to the Buddha lah. Then after paying homage to him, he sat down. Then the Buddha said to them, bhikkhus, is it true, that a number of monks actually informed me that you said this, that we eat in the evening, we eat 3 meals in the day, why should we actually abandon a benefit, visible now and, and pursue, a benefit that, we're not even sure of, so the Buddha started off, by actually asking first, factually, is it correct, is it true that you actually said this, and hold this view, and we shall eat in the morning, the evening, and night, and afternoon, as and when I like, outside the proper time, Then of course these two renegade bhikkhus told the Buddha, yes, Bhante, then of course the Buddha then went to this. He said, bhikkhus, have you known me to teach the Dhamma in such a way? Whatever person experiences, whether pleasant, painful, or neither pleasant, painful, whether pleasant or painful, or whether neither pleasant or painful, unwholesome states diminish in him and wholesome states increase. So the Buddha started off by actually asking him, have you ever known me to teach the Dhamma in this way? That, these three Vedana that we experience, like as you know, the five aggregates of Vedana means what? Pleasant, painful, or neither pleasant nor painful, right? Right. So these are the three uh, types of feelings that we experience. So once these three feelings are felt, then unwholesome states diminish and wholesome states increase. So did you ever hear me teach the Dhamma this way? Then they said, no, Bhante, and they said, because have you not known me to teach the Dhamma in such a way? So of course, the Buddha now says, have you not known me to teach me in such a way? Here, when someone feels a certain kind of pleasant feeling, unwholesome states increase in him, and wholesome states diminish, Okay, so this is actually one type when you have some pleasant feeling, unwholesome states increase and wholesome states diminish, And when someone feels another kind of pleasant feeling, unwholesome states diminish in him and wholesome states increase. So it's a bit you need to be very clear in your mind when you read the sutta for this part, So you can what the Buddha is trying to say, that whenever pleasant feeling arises, there's two consequences, right? There's one where unwholesome increase, and of course when unwholesome increase means wholesome decreases, you know. Then the other type is when the pleasant feeling is unwholesome um decreases, then the wholesome increases. So there's this same logical analysis is then applied to, in terms of painful as well as neither painful, neither pleasant nor painful. So here is a bit long, but what the Buddha is trying to say, that whenever someone feels a kind of pleasant feeling, right, when unwholesome increases, and wholesome diminishes, Buddha says, abandon such a kind of uh, feeling. You should actually abandon, such a pleasant kind of pleasant feeling. Um, and conversely, if you actually have a pleasant feeling, where the unwholesome states, you know, uh, uh, actually decreases, and the wholesome states actually increases, then the Buddha says that you should actually then try to, increase, strengthen, this, and try to hold on, try to actually maintain, this pleasant feeling itself. For example, you're a jhana, and you actually, it's a spiritual pleasant feeling, that you have, and you want to continue to practice, observation of five aggregates. That's what the Buddha says by saying this pleasant feeling, if it leads to this unwholesome qualities, decreasing, and then the wholesome increasing, then you should maintain. But conversely, if the unwholesome actually increases and the wholesome decreases, like for example, pleasant feeling due to clinging to the five causes of sensual pleasure, you actually become greedy, or you become angry, because you don't get what you want. You make a reservation in the restaurant, hoping that you enjoy a lot of food, but suddenly they say, oh, your reservation is cancelled. You feel very angry, So uh, so the Buddha says that whenever this happens, you should abandon it. You should abandon it. If because unwholesome increases and wholesome decreases. So actually, this sutta itself, um, the Buddha actually talks about these three types of feelings. You can actually go through it yourself. I will not actually go through this, but the underlying principle is the same. That you must actually, whenever any feeling arises in you, you must actually have this sati sampajanya. You must know, first of all, is it pleasant, unpleasant? Or is it neither pleasant nor neither pleasant nor painful? Then you should then contemplate is, does this actually lead to more of unwholesome, and less of wholesome, or otherwise. If it leads to more unwholesome, then you should then contemplate, apply the contemplation of the anatta, non-self nature to five aggregates, and try to see that there's actually non-self, and try to, and understand, with wisdom, that actually there's actually intrinsically no self, and it's empty, slowly, you actually grow detached, and be able to overcome and let go of this unwholesome and this unwholesome quality that's arising in your mind. So the Buddha is actually um uh it's actually highlighting this in terms of the feeling component. um so that part, is actually being highlighted by the Buddha here, and of course, don't say all bhikkhus that they have worked, Okay, so because of this, right, then the Buddha then moves on, from this contemplation itself, right, in terms of whether you should enter upon and abide, in this feeling, for example, if it leads to more wholesome qualities and less unwholesome, the Buddha says you should enter upon, and abide. But if it's converse, if it leads to more unwholesome and less wholesome, then you should actually abandon it, and to contemplate it, right, and abandon it, just like when your head or your turban is on fire, or when you see, for example, there is actually dirt on your face, and when you see yourself in the mirror, you see there's a dirt, or maybe there's some food morsel on your mouth, you quickly want to remove it, otherwise it looks very unsightly, right? So that's precisely what the Buddha actually mentions here. You should see, whether there's actually a wholesome or unwholesome, by using sati sampajanya, through the six sense basis, like what I always highlighted to you, and by contemplating the five aggregates through the six sense doors. And this is exactly what the Buddha taught in this Kayagata Sati, right? So with this, the Buddha then moves on, to actually talk about um uh, you know, about the different types, of practice, the stages of development, by the bhikkhus, because the Buddha then naturally goes on from the contemplating of feelings, how which feeling you should enter and abide, which one you should abandon. Then the Buddha then talks about the different stages of development that the monks have actually practiced. So he says, bhikkhus, I do not say of all bhikkhus that they still have work to do with diligence, nor do I say of all bhikkhus that they have no more work to do with diligence. Then he says, I do not say of those bhikkhus who are arahants, retains destroyed, who have lived the holy life, done what had to be done, laid down the burden and reached the true goal, destroyed the factor of being, and are completely liberated through final knowledge, that I do not say, but for these bhikkhus who have all the taints destroyed, that they still have work to do with diligence. Why is that? They have done their work with diligence. They are no more capable of being negligent. So the Buddha actually starts off by highlighting, that okay, there is these arahants, who have actually, eradicated, all the kilesas, have uprooted ignorance, uprooted the five, unshackled themselves from the 10 fetters, including the five higher fetters, and I and uh, so the Buddha says, for this type of arahants, there's no more training required, So that's why they're called aseka, right? They are actually non-trainees, aseka, so they are arahants. But then the Buddha says, I say of such bhikkhus who are in higher training, whose minds have not reached the goal and who are still aspiring to the supreme security from bondage, that there's still work to do, So the Buddha is actually, in a way, like juxtaposing, comparing between these two. One is the arahant, the asekas, and the other one is the sekas, the trainees, who we say, of course, the trainees themselves, of course, they still have work to do, which means those who are non-sotapannas, the sotapannas, all the way to anagamis, right? So these are actually the one in training, Then the Buddha then goes on to describe this very interesting part, about this MN70. He says, bhikkhus, there are seven kinds of persons to be found existing in this world, What seven? They are one liberated in both ways, These are like the both ways liberated, Um, and this is the first type, and the second one, the Buddha says, one liberated by wisdom, just by wisdom only, they are not both way liberated, just by wisdom only. And then the third type is actually what the Buddha called, the body witness, or what we call the kaya saki. Kaya saki is actually the body witness, And then one attained to view, okay? This is uh, uh, this is the other type, of the enlightened being, one attained to view, then one liberated by faith, this is the fifth type now, one liberated by faith, and then a Dhamma follower and a faith follower, Dhamma follower and faith follower, I'm sure you have actually heard of them, the Namanusari and the Sadhanusari, they are actually not Sotapannas yet, they haven't known and seen dependent, arising. They have not known and seen the Dhamma, but they are actually on the path, towards attaining, Sotapatti. So, they are also an Arya, they are on the path towards, Sotapatti, but they haven't attained the fruit of Sotapatti yet, or just on the path to attain Sotapatti. So they are called Dhammanusari and Sadhanusari. Then, of course, then the Buddha actually went on to explain. So, what kind of person is one liberated in both ways? What kind of arahant is this? Liberated in both ways. Here, some person contacts with the body, and abides in those liberations that are peaceful and immaterial, transcending forms and transcending forms, which means this liberated in both ways, they actually are able to to actually enter, and dwell, into the arupa attainments, the formless attainments, arupa attainments, in addition to the four jhanas, right? They're able to actually attain, enter, and attain the four arupa attainments. We don't call them arupa jhanas, like, in the sutta, the Buddha calls them formless attainments, arupa attainments. So they are able to actually enter into them, and they are able to abide in them, which means they actually remain. They actually they're able to actually remain in contact, with that base, using the body itself, they're able to remain in contact with that base, using the body, which means they actually abides in those liberations, which are actually arupas, peaceful and immaterial, peaceful attainments, which refer to the arupas, transcending forms, so they abide, other than entering into these arupas, they are able to abide in them, they're able to remain in this formless attainments, so which means they actually remain in contact, with these base, of attainments, through well, I mean, the sutta says body, but actually the word kaya itself is actually not body, but with the mind, So in this case, he actually is able to abide, in the formless, attainments, and his attains are destroyed by his seeing with wisdom. So we can see those who are liberated in both ways, their strength are both in wisdom as well as in terms of samadhi, They are strong in both, So there are some people, they are strong, in terms of wisdom. They're able to contemplate. Yet, they are also strong in samadhi. They're able to, enter, attain the four jhanas, very successively. And then they go into these formless attainments, all the way to neither perception nor perception, nor non-perception, and they're able to actually abide in them, and remain in contact, with all these bases through, his kaya, through his mind. So, this kind of person is called both ways liberated. This is called liberated in both ways. I do not say of such a bhikkhu that he has still work to do with diligence. Why is that? He has done his work with diligence. He's more capable of being he's no more capable of being negligent. So, which means that these arahants are actually liberated in both ways. And then the Buddha then goes on by saying, what kind of person is one liberated by wisdom only? No, not both ways, just wisdom. Here, some person does not contact with the body, and abide in those liberations that are peaceful and immaterial, transcending forms. So if you actually read here, the Buddha, is saying that these arahants were liberated by wisdom. They are able. First of all, they are able to enter and attain, the arupas. It's not that they are not able to attain the arupas. They are able to attain the jhanas and also the arupas, but they do not actually dwell, in the arupas. They do not dwell in the arupas, and through and contact and remain in contact with the base through through the kaya, through their minds. They are not able to actually they don't actually abide and dwell in that, but um their taints are already destroyed by seeing with wisdom. So this kind of arahant is actually called liberated by wisdom, So, and the Buddha says that, because they are already arahants, using wisdom, the faculty of wisdom is very strong, So this arahant has really done all the work that had to be done, and he has done his work with diligence, and there's no more capable of being negligent, you see. So this is another type of Arahant, where they're liberated by wisdom, So they are able to attain, all the jhanas, and they could also obtain, all the arupas, but they do not actually dwell or abide, means that they do not actually remain in contact with that all these arupas through the kaya, by using his mind. He does not actually dwell in that. So if you can see from here, actually, um, uh, just a few interesting observations here. So some people actually read this sutta, and they actually make the conclusion that, you see, the Buddha says, those liberated by wisdom, they do not actually dwell, in the arupas. But the Buddha never says that they actually attain the four jhanas, right? So therefore, for those arahants liberated by wisdom, the jhanas are not required. So that's why, only vipassana is required to be practiced only. No need to attain what jhana, and the arupas. Since the Buddha says liberated by wisdom, the Buddha only says they did not obtain the arupas. But then for the rupa jhanas, the first four jhanas, the Buddha never mentioned, So which means this liberated by wisdom, the arahants liberated by wisdom do not need to develop jhanas. That's why, what the commentary says about the dry vision arahant, the sukha vipassaka, is actually in line with this MN70. So we shall see in other suttas that actually that's not true. If you see from Anguttara Nikaya Book of Nines, those arahants liberated by wisdom, they are able to attain the arupas as well. They might be able to, although not necessary, but some are able, to attain the rupas and the arupa attainments. So it is not true, So, but many of them just read by saying, because the Buddha says that they do not attain the arupas, but the Buddha also never said that they are able to attain the jhanas. So that's why dry vision arahant is possible. That is one argument. Which is also not held to be not supported. By AN9, Book of Nines, and the other thing, of course, is if you look at the word here, does not contact with the body, does not contact with the body and abide, in liberations which are peaceful and material. So the thing here is, if you actually say, that you remain in contact with the arupa attainments using your body, because when you actually enter into arupas, that means you're actually surmounting the perceptions and forms, surmounting of the impeachment of sensory perceptions. It means you're already going beyond, the body, and you enter into the arupas. So how can you actually remain in contact with the arupa attainments with the body? It's a bit contradiction, right? Because the arupas are supposed to be something that's beyond form. You have actually surmounted the perceptions of forms and sensory perceptions. So it's really beyond the body. So how can you actually experience and abide in formless attainments by using the body? How can you remain in contact with these formless attainments using the body? So it's very clear that this body is not correctly translated. Body itself does not mean body, but it means the mind, right? Because you're entering into the realms of the arupas, means you're already, experiencing the arupas using the mind. That's why the kaya here can also mean body. It doesn't necessarily, kaya here can also mean mind. No, it doesn't mean just body. So that is the question also I asked at the beginning of this talk, right? So a lot of things can actually be gathered from here. So you need to slowly digest this, So there's this both ways liberated by wisdom. Okay, so these two categories are already arahants. They already reached the far shore, already end of samsara. Already attain nibbana, in this life, and also in final nibbana, right? Uh, so well and good. So the Buddha then goes on to those who have not attained arahants yet, but they are already in different stages of the ariyas. Remember I told you about sotapanna, all the way to the anagamis, remember or not? So the Buddha says, what kind of person is a body witness? This kaya saki, right? Kaya is actually body, witness is saki, kaya saki. So here, some person contacts with the body, abides in those liberations that are peaceful in the material transcending forms, So this Kayasaki, this body witness, he's able to, first of all, end rupa attainments, and he's able to actually abide, in these arupas. Means that he's able to remain in contact with the arupas through the kaya, which is through the mind. He's able to remain in contact with all these bases of arupas through the kaya, which is the mind, So, which means his faculty of samadhi is very strong, So this body witness is actually somebody who is actually very strong in faculty compared to the liberator of wisdom. His faculty is very strong in wisdom. Or Sariputta, right? He's very strong in wisdom, But then there's also this body witness, who is not an arahant yet, but he's someone who has attained, who is able to abide, in the arupas. And the Buddha says, some of his taints are already destroyed by seeing wisdom. Note the word, some of his taints, not all, some of his taints. So this kind of person is called a body witness, a Kayasaki, I say of such a bhikkhu that he still has work to do with diligence. Correct, right? He still has work to do, uh, so seeing this full of diligence of such a bhikkhu, I say that he still have work to do, with diligence, So this is the body witness, okay? So the body witness, just like the both ways liberated arahant, right? This body witness, actually, the faculties is strong in terms of wisdom as well as in terms of samadhi as well, Uh, um, uh, so samadhi and panya, so they are actually very strong in samadhi and panya, So these two components are very strong, as compared to the liberated by wisdom, where the faculty is strong, in terms of panya, So the body witness is somebody who is not an arahant yet, but his faculties are strong, in samadhi and panya. Okay, and then the other type, the next type is what kind of person is what attained to view. Okay, this attain to view. When you say the word view, when you look at the word view, means what? It's wisdom already, right? So here, some person does not contact with the body and abide in those liberations that are peaceful and immaterial. So this attain to view, in contrast to the Kayasaki, right? The the body witness, this attain to view does not remain in contact, with the arupas using the kaya or the mind, and he does not abide in these arupas, which are peaceful and immaterial, transcending forms, he does not abide in them, but he may, enter and attain into these arupas, these arupas, but it does not mean that he's not able to attain. He's able to attain, but um he does not abide in them because his forte, his strength in spiritual faculty, the strength does not actually lie in samadhi. So he does not dwell in those arupas, And the Buddha says, some of his taints are already destroyed by seeing with wisdom, and he has reviewed and examined with wisdom the teachings proclaimed by the Tathagata. So this person is called one attained to view. So the Buddha says that because only some of his taints are already destroyed, I say of such a bhikkhu that he still has work to do with diligence, because he hasn't gone to the far shore yet, right? He's still a seka, a trainee, So there's this attain to view. Just now we saw his body witness, where his samadhi and panya are strong. Attain to view, where the panya is strong. And then the next one is the Buddha says, what kind of person is one liberated by faith? This one, the Buddha says, here some person also does not contact with the body and abide in those liberations that are peaceful and immature, which means for this liberated by faith, he also does not abide in the arupas. He may be able to enter, and attain the arupas, but he does not dwell. He does not abide. And he does in this arupa, he does not remain in contact with these bases of arupas using kaya, through the kaya or the mind. He does not abide in them. He does not remain in contact. So but some of his taints are already destroyed by seeing with wisdom. So and the difference is this liberated by faith, this seka, this trainee, his faith is planted, rooted, and established in the Tathagata. He has such strong faith, in the Buddha, in the Blessed One, that his faculty of faith is very strong. That's why, he's one to be liberated by faith. He's not liberated yet, So strictly speaking, he's to be liberated by faith, and he does not actually abide, in the arupas, Even though he attains, he does not abide and he does not remain in contact, with these bases, through the kaya, So why is that? Because the Venerable One, the same thing, seeing that this rule of diligence for such a bhikkhu, I say he still has work to do with diligence. So it's very interesting, we have two types of arahants, and then in terms of the sekas, we have body witness, attain the view, and liberated by faith. So three types of trainees, the sekas. So you can see here, this both ways liberated, the samadhi and panya are strong, and then for the liberated by wisdom, the panya is strong, then for the body witness itself, the samadhi and panya, the faculties are actually strong, and then attain the view as well as liberated by faith, the panya faculty, the wisdom faculty is strong, you see. So you see, there are different ways depending on your temperaments and how you want to practice, whether you actually want to practice liberated by faith, or whether you liberated both ways. It very much depends on your strength, in terms of your ability to enter into samadhi, and in terms of your wisdom faculties. That's why the Buddha says that the five spiritual faculties, in terms of your sada, viriya, right? Sada, viriya, sati, samadhi, panya, right? So these are the spiritual faculties, samadhi and panya, you see, the five spiritual faculties, in terms of sada, viriya, sati, samadhi, and panya, the fourth and fifth spiritual faculties, So depending on which type you are more inclined to, right? There are some people, they find it very easy to actually enter into samadhi very easily, and all the way through, to arupas, very easily, super meditators, and of course, all these proteges, they are very gifted meditators, they're able to do this, whereas some are only up to maybe 4 jhanas or maybe first jhana, but the most important thing is you must be able to break through to the Dhamma through wisdom, Wisdom is actually present in all. There must be there, not just samadhi, you must have some wisdom in all, whether you are liberated by both ways, by wisdom, or whether you are body witness, or whether you are attained to view or liberated by faith, you must use wisdom, seeing with wisdom, you must actually destroy the taints, all the kilesas, all the asavas, the affluence, the taints must be destroyed, must be uprooted by using wisdom. Otherwise, with just samadhi alone, will not get you to that stage, So you see, it's very clear, the whole diagram of the arahants in terms of the samadhi and panya, Of course, sada, virya, sati is definitely you must have, whether wherever you are, which type, the five spiritual faculties, sada, virya, sati must be there. But samadhi, panya, that's where it varies in terms of your inclinations, in terms of your strength, in terms of your forte, right? Um, very much lah, just like, if you want to drive a car to a destination, right, you might want to maybe some prefer to buy an EV, but some people prefer to buy a combustion engine, because it's less hassle, you don't have to charge the car, right? So it depends on what your strengths are, whether you want to go by way of an EV, or whether you by way of a ICE car, it's up to you, it's up to you, you just have to assess it based on your strength, based on the pros and cons, your ability, your spiritual faculties, So, there are many ways that converge, towards this arahantship, but all encapsulated under the Noble Eightfold Path, whichever way you must actually follow the Noble Eightfold Path, And then Buddha says, what kind of person is the Dhamma follow? Dhamma Nusari. Of course, this one here, some person does not contact with the body, which means, he does not actually, uh, remain, in contact, with these arupas, but then, and his taints are not yet destroyed, by seeing with wisdom, Um, but those teachings proclaimed by the Tathagata are accepted to him after reflecting on them sufficiently with wisdom, which means he reflects on the Buddha's teaching, and then he accepts, he accepts them, So, and furthermore, he has these qualities, you see, the faith faculty, the energy faculty, mindfulness faculties, concentration, and wisdom. You see, the five spiritual faculties are critical, they are the integral building blocks for any one spiritual journey, So this Dharma follower actually has got these five spiritual faculties, and he actually contemplates what the Tathagata has actually taught, and reflecting them with wisdom, and he accepts the teaching, and of course the Buddha says this Dharma follower does not actually abide, in those arupas, you know. I mean, though they may be able to attain and enter and attain into these rupas and arupas, but they do not actually abide in the arupas. No? Okay, so that is actually the Dharma follower. Then what kind of person is a faith follower? This is a Saddha Nusari. Just now it was Dhamma Nusari, right? So now it's a Saddha Nusari. Remember Dhamma Nusari and Saddha Nusari? They are not yet Sotapannas, So they have not actually they do not actually know and see the Dhamma yet, and they have not actually seen uh, uh, dependent arising, and dependent cessation, in relation to the five aggregates as well as conditioned phenomena. They have not seen it yet, but they have these qualities, and they are actually on the path towards attainment to attaining Sotapatti. So they are actually on the path, they have not attained the fruit yet. So they are also a type of Aryas, and of course, the Buddha, the suttas actually say that, they with this Dhammanusari and Saddhanusari are guaranteed to actually attain Sotapatti, before the end of this life, before their lives, before they pass away, they actually will become, Sotapanna, And what kind of person is a faith follower? And of course the Buddha says this Dhammanusari and Saddhanusari are actually, they are incapable of actually doing anything that will lead them to at the woeful plains, so they do not actually commit any of the 10 ducharitas, okay. So what kind of person is a faith follower? Here some person does not contact with the body and abide in those liberations that are peaceful and immature. It's the same. The faith follower also does not actually abide in the arupas, though they may actually attain the rupas and arupas, they may, but they do not actually remain in contact with the basis of the arupas, through kaya, which is through the mind. I disagree with the interpretation body here, because arupas are already transcended the body, the perceptions of forms, and then the sensory perceptions. So when you enter into arupas, there are no longer forms, sensory perceptions are out. So it's no longer with the body, but it's through the mind. So here the person does not contact with the does not contact the arupas with the mind, but his taints are not yet destroyed. He has not seen he has not actually destroyed the asavas with wisdom. Yet he has sufficient faith and love, for the Tathagata, and he has these qualities, faith quality, energy, faith faculty, energy faculty, the five lah, Saddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya, the five spiritual faculties. This follower also has, So, but the Buddha says that this fourth follower, he still has work to do, So the Buddha says, seeing this fruit of diligence for such a bhikkhu, I say that he still has work to do, So, then of course the Buddha went on by actually telling this. The story started with Asaji and Puna Basuka, right? So they told these bhikkhus, I do not say that final knowledge is achieved all at once. The Buddha says, the full enlightenment is not achieved all at once. I mean, it doesn't mean that you just practice and suddenly, suddenly you just become an arahant, all and behold, like lo and behold, that final knowledge is achieved by gradual training, gradual practice, gradual progress, remember the Buddha actually says that the Dhamma is actually like a um the sea, where the sea bed, it actually it's actually like gradually inclines towards the deeper part of the ocean, right? The ocean doesn't suddenly just abruptly just goes down into an abyss, it's not that way, you know. So that's why the Buddha in many suttas say, the practice of Dhamma is just like, the ocean itself, it's actually very gradual, um, and and uh it's like very much like, for example, when you tie a rope to a ship, and then this rope slowly, it actually wears off, So it's just like the practice of Dhamma. It slowly sort of like develops, but you don't know how much have you developed, you don't know actually how much you progress, but slowly and surely, just like when you're holding an axe, or to actually work on something, So you don't find that small axe, how much have you used, you don't know, right? Because but slowly as you use it, the more you use it, the more and more it wears away, right? Then now you can see that that it has been used, in such a manner. So it's just like the Dhamma itself, the practice is actually not very abrupt, but it's actually very gradual, it's a very gradual, and then the Buddha also then went on to talk about the gradual training, gradual progress. The Buddha is actually trying to teach this to renegade bhikkhus a lesson, about gradual practice. That you pay respect. You go and visit a teacher. Then you have faith in him. You pay respect. You give ear to the Dhamma. Then you memorize, and then what is taught. Last time, no paper, anything, all right. So you need to memorize it, and then you need to examine it, and reflect, upon the teaching that has been taught, and then you have to then um get then you get a reflective acceptance, then you have the zeal, then you have the enthusiasm, then you apply, you meditate, then after that you scrutinize, you strive, you meditate, and after that realize with the body's supreme truth, seeing with wisdom, then you actually penetrate into the Dhamma, and become and attain various stages of enlightenment, So the Buddha says, both of you are actually, do not actually follow, these gradual training, you do not actually pay respect to the Buddha, you do not actually give lend ear, and you do not actually follow instructions. So the Buddha says, bhikkhus, you have lost your way, bhikkhus, you have been practicing the wrong way. Just how far bhikkhus have this misguided man strayed from this doctrine and discipline, the Dhamma Vinaya, um, uh, okay, so actually, the Buddha actually went on to tell them, that actually, you should actually, follow whatever that the Blessed One has actually taught you, Um, uh, yeah. So here it says, because even where teacher is concerned with material things, even if a teacher who is actually not well practiced, uh, um, and you haggle, and the disciples haggle with sort of this teacher is not proper, So what more the Buddha himself, who is actually enlightened, and not concerned with material things, um, you know, um, and so it's not appropriate, So then he told the bhikkhus, it's for a faithful disciple who's intent on fathoming the teacher's dispensation is natural. The Blessed One, you should actually then always remind yourself that, the Blessed One is the teacher, I'm a disciple, and the Blessed One knows, I do not know, Um, and for a faithful disciple who's intent on, understanding, you should actually conduct yourself, with a lot of enthusiasm, let my skin and let my bones remain, let my flesh and blood dry up, I shall not relax until I've attained, for a faithful disciple who's intent of an understanding, one of the two fruits, may be expected, either you become an arhat now, or if there's anything, any clinging, then you actually become anagami, So that's why the Buddha actually told these two Asaji and Punabhasuka, that you are not actually practicing the right way, you should actually, follow, whatever the teacher has taught you, just like the gradual training, and because of this, then the bhikkhus were delighted, and satisfied in the Blessed One's words. And of course, with this, they then follow the Buddha's, teaching, that you must actually fast, and not eat at the inappropriate time, So that ends this MN70 itself, So if you actually look at this MN70, in terms of this 7 types of Aryas, the enlightened beings, if you actually look at of course, this AN 10.13, I just gave you the 10 factors, which I already mentioned just now, right? In terms of the 5 lower factors, 5 high factors. So you can actually look at them in AN 10.13, all right? And then if you want to read more about this body witness, in AN 9.43, it actually there's a sutta called Kaya Saki Sutta, which is also on this body witness. But the Buddha also talks about this. Not the Buddha. Here is actually conversation between Udayin and Ananda. So this Venerable Udayin actually asked Venerable Ananda, Kaya Saki, to what extent is one described by the Buddha, as a Kaya Saki, Then the Venerable Ananda also um uh, explains it now, which is in line with MN70. If you read here, it says, this monk, he remains in, he actually enters in the first jhana, okay. So this body witness, you see, other than the arupas, he attains the first jhana, and then of course he goes on to attain the second, third, and fourth jhana, and then he actually enters into the arupas, right? You see here dimension of infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, and the neither perception nor perception. Neva Sanya Na Sanya, right? So, and then he remains touching with his body in whatever way there is an opening there, So, which means he remains um touching, he remains touching in with his mind in whenever way there's open, which means he actually he abides, in the arupas, and he actually remains touching the base of these arupas through his kaya, through his mind, that he's able to abide and remain, in that high level samadhi, right? This arupa, because his faculty of samadhi is very strong, so it is to this extent, that the Buddha actually calls, this that monk, Kaya Sakila. But of course, he has not actually uprooted all the taints yet. So, so he this body witness is somebody who is not an arahant yet, you know. But his faculty of samadhi and panya, are actually strong, so he's able to abide, in the arupas. So then of course the Buddha then goes on to say, but of course once this Kayasaki enter and remain into the cessation of perception and feelings, Nirodha Samapatti, right? Then he sees with discernment, with mental fermentations, go to the total, and he remains touching with his body in whatever way the base is there. So which means his fermentations, the asavas, all were eradicated, because once he actually, comes out from this Nirodha Samapatti, and then he's able to remain, in that base itself, then then the Buddha says, then of course this Kayasaki then becomes, someone who is actually fully enlightened, he's a chief arahantship, that's why I say without provision, that's why the Buddha says without a sequel, whenever the Buddha says there's a sequel, means that there's still work to be done, ada kerja lagi lah, but if there is actually without a sequel, means no work already, everything, all the homework done, so that's Kayasaki, So if you actually want to look at this release through discernment, Panya Vimutti, what we call, Panya Vimutti. So just now, like what I mentioned just now, this Venerable Uday also say, release through discernment, Vimutti, Panya Vimutti, So to what extent does a Blessed One actually, describe somebody who is actually a Panya Vimutti, then this Venerable Ananda says, he actually attains the first jhana, and he actually knows this through discernment, and he actually attains the second, third, and fourth jhana. And you see here, and he attains the dimension of of the arupas, See, so now remember or not, in MN70, whenever the Buddha describes this panya vimutti, right, liberated by wisdom, right, the Buddha mentioned only about the arupas, right? So some people argue that, oh, the Buddha never mentioned anything about the jhana, so therefore there is this dry eye arahants. But if you look at this AN 9.44, the Buddha actually mentions that this Panya Vimutti is a monk who is actually enters and attain the first, second, third, fourth jhana, and only then he goes on to the arupas, you see, sequentially, in that way, So you cannot argue then that the liberated by wisdom, it does not have the four jhanas, The AN 9.44 already mentions very clearly that this liberated by wisdom bhikkhus actually have developed the four jhanas, and then before they proceed on to the arupas, but they do not remain in contact with these bases of arupas using the kaya, So that's why he's not liberated in both ways. He only knows it through wisdom only, but he does not remain in contact with this base, through the kaya, So he only uses the wisdom faculty only, because his wisdom faculty is strongest, So then of course the Buddha then says, if this liberated by wisdom goes into Nirodha Samapatti, and when it comes out, then he's also become an arahant, So that is actually without a sequel lah. Without a sequel. Before that was with a sequel, right? So this one is without a sequel, means no more already. The chapter ends, no more sequel, okay? So this is what we are 9.44, in terms of Panya Vimutti. So if you actually look at this A and 9.45, also it tells you a lot more information about this both ways liberated, Ubato Bhaga, Vimutti, Ubato Bhaga means both ways liberated, So again, this remember Udayan asked, Ubato Bhaga Vimutti, Ubato Bhaga Vimutti, to what extent is one actually Buddha described as one liberated in both ways? You see, this descriptions is totally in line with MN70, like what Buddha described, So this Venerable Ananda says, this both ways liberated, he attains first, second, third, and fourth jhana, you know. But even in the first jhana itself, he remains touching with his mind in whatever way there's opening there. Means he actually abides and remains in contact, with that base of first that jhana, that jhana, using his mind. He abides in that. So his faculty of samadhi is very strong, and he knows it through discernment. See, he has got both. He contemplates the five aggregates, while in the first jhana, he contemplates the forms, the feelings, perceptions, volitional formations and consciousness, through the six sense doors, right? He's able to actually contemplate, and using wisdom, but at the same time, he's able to abide, in the first jhana, it's very strong, the faculty is very strong. So that's why, it's actually both ways liberated, See, so you see here, so the faculty of this samadhi is it's actually very strong all the way from first jhana, Then the second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, all the way to the arupas, the infinite space consciousness, nothingness, and then the perception, non-perception, all these he uses wisdom to contemplate, to that all these are just fabricated, all these I mean, in the four jhanas you can contemplate the five aggregates lah, but once you enter into the arupas, then it's basically, in terms of contemplation through your mind, contemplation through in terms of the qualities of these arupas, they're actually intrinsically they're non-self, So if you're able to do this both ways liberated, he uses wisdom, but he also remains touching with his mind in whatever way there's opening there. He knows it through discernment, means he's able to remain in contact, with the base of these arupas through the kaya, through the mind, So he's able to remain in contact, he abides in this formless attainments, So that's why, he's uh his faculty of samadhi is very strong, So then, of course, then this ubato bhaga vimutti. So the Buddha says, if this both ways liberated actually comes out from Nirodha Samapatti, then of course, he becomes, an arahant, because it's both ways liberated, and he comes out, uh he remains touching with his body, whatever. So when it comes out of it, so he becomes an arahant. So what the Buddha is trying to say here is that both ways liberated. This ubato bhaga vimutti. Both their faculties of this samadhi and panya are very strong. So the first two paragraphs here, the Buddha says with a sequel means he's actually contemplating sequentially, but he has not actually attained the final liberation yet, so final enlightenment. So so the Buddha then says, once he comes out from this Nirodha Samapatti, and he's able to remain in that sort of attainment, then he would be released in both ways without a sequel, So he'll become an arahant who is liberated in both ways. So you see here the description in AN 9.45 is entirely in line with MN70, which means this Ubato Bhaga Vimutti, the both ways liberated, they're actually strong in terms of the samadhi as well as the panya faculties, So uh so that's actually very interesting, like, if you want to look, if you want to actually study more about it, And of course, the question here in terms of the psychic power, which I mentioned to you right earlier, um, you may just want to refer to this SN 12.70 about Susima Sutta, I will not go into very detail, but I just want to just tell you the gist of it, that this Susima was actually a wanderer in Rajagaha at that time. Now in India, still there, called Rajgir. So last time in Buddha's time, it's called Rajagaha. So this Susima was a wanderer. So at that time, the Buddhas and the Sangha of bhikkhus, they were well taken care of, given a lot of requisites, alms, food, lodging, medical requisites, because they were teaching the Dhamma, and everybody understood the Dhamma, and everybody had a lot of strong faith in the Buddha, So this Susima and his gang, his ascetics, wandering ascetics, hey, Susima, since they're so well supported, why don't you go there and find out, what is actually taught by the Buddha, and then once you've learned it, then we can also teach the same thing, then we will become well supported also, So this Susima say, okay, I'll go and find out, and become like what do you call that? Becoming like an undercover bhikkhu, just go there, and find out, what's there. So I can, after that, I disrobe, and then join you back, and then, and we teach the same thing, So that's the scheme they have, the scheme of things, So then this Susima then went to Venerable Ananda, said, oh, I want to become a monk. I want to actually receive the going forth, So then this Venerable Ananda, brought him to see, this to see the Buddha, then the Buddha actually admitted him, gave him the Upasampada, and become a monk, And then this Venerable Susima, uh, um, one day, he actually heard, and he actually asked, a group of arahants, and he actually asked, and he was sitting there, right? He asked the arahants, he said, hey, friends, you are arahants, right? Is it true as they say that you have they declared the final knowledge, in the Blessed One's presence, that you have actually understood the Four Noble Truths, They say, yes, yes, friend, Then, then this Susima asked, then since you're arahants, right, do you actually have manifold supranormal powers, can you actually transform yourself to become many, and then from many become one? You appear and vanish, like out of a sudden, you disappear, from me, suddenly, and then you appear again, um, uh, and then you go unimpeded through walls, you can walk through walls, and mountains as if it's space, like as if there's nothing there, and you are actually dive in and out of earth as if it's water, like you're jumping to a swimming pool, in and out of earth, and then you walk on earth, walk on water without sinking, means you can just walk on the lake or the sea without sinking as if it were dry land, or you're sitting cross-legged, you can fly through the air like a winged bird, and with your hand you can touch and stroke the sun, so powerful, you exercise influence, with your body, even as far as the Brahma world. Do you have such supernormal powers, Then this Aran said, no, friend, we don't have, Then this Susima said, that's a bit strange. Then how about, do you have divine ear? Can you hear the divine sound, of the devas and the human, whether it's near or far? Can you hear what the devas in Tusita heaven are talking about? Can you hear? You said, no, we cannot, Then he grows even more puzzled, Then do you know the awareness of other beings? Can you read people's thoughts or not, Then the Bhikkhu said, no, we don't, Then having seen this, do you recollect the manifold past lives? Can you see people's past lives, where they have been born, through because of the different deeds they have done, uh, uh, Do you actually see them, appearing? They say no, then he becomes even uh, more irritated already, right? Say, then do you actually have divine eye where you can actually see beings passing away, beauty and ugly, fortunate, unfortunate, uh, inferior, inferior, in accordance with their karma, based on their karma, they are born either beauty or ugly, fortunate, unfortunate, whether they are in superior positions or inferior, because of their karma. Do you actually see that or not? Then this group of says, Mark said no. Uh, then do you dwell touching with your body the peaceful emancipations, the formless states beyond form? You see, the very same thing that Buddha described in MN70, right? Do you actually dwell touching with your kaya, the peaceful emancipations, means the arupa attainments, the formless states beyond form, Do you actually um do that, are you able to remain in that formless attainments? They say no, although they are able to enter and attain, they do not dwell, they do not actually they don't actually remain in those formless, they do not actually abide, and remain in contact, that's the difference, so they say no. So just now, friends, didn't you make declaration without having attained any of these dharmas? Then I said, but I thought you said you're Arans. How come you make the declaration that you don't have any of those attainments, those dharmas? Then the monk said, we are released through discernment, through wisdom, friend Susima. I don't understand the detailed meaning of your brief statement. It would be good if you could speak. You know. So then the group of friends, this Arahants, wisdom liberated Arahant said, whether or not you understand, friend Susima, we are still released through wisdom, So this very Susima got up lah, because since not going anywhere, right? So they went up and then he went up and went to see the Buddha, and then on arriving, he asked he told the Buddha the entire conversation he had with the monks lah. Then the Buddha then told this Susima, first Susima, there's the knowledge of the regularity of the Dhamma, dependent co-arising, after which there is the knowledge of unbinding. You see, the Buddha talks about dependent co-arising, You must able to see through causes and conditions, through, your six sense doors, when you contemplate the five aggregates, don't only then the knowledge of the regularity of the Dhamma, then only the knowledge of unbinding will actually emerge, will actually arise in you, If you don't practice it this way, you can never actually attain the knowledge and the wisdom, the wisdom. So, and then this, you see, this statement itself is short, but it's so deep, this dependent co-arising. Then I don't understand the detailed meaning of the Blessed One brief statement. It would be good if Blessed One would speak, Then the Buddha also says, whether or not you understand Susima, uh, is the case that there is this knowledge of the regularity of the Dhamma. Regularity means what? The Dhamma itself, is actually arises through causes and conditions, right? So everything arises, sabbe Dhamma anatta, everything everything is actually non-self. Everything arises through causes and conditions. If you can see that, there's already penetration to the Dhamma, and then there's a knowledge of unbinding, knowledge of Nibbana, So of course, this is a very long sutta. The Buddha then asked him about the five aggregates, body, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, consciousness, whether it's empty and all this. Then of course the Venerable Susima then answers everything is non-self, empty, because of that is impermanent, it's actually, a dukkha as well, right? So he answers all this. Then you see, then having known thus, Susima, do you actually have, I mean, so Buddha is actually telling Susima, you have actually seen the non-self nature of the five aggregates I just expounded to you, right? And you have seen the five aggregates which are empty of a self and anatta, anicca and dukkha. Do you will the manifold supernormal powers? Have do you actually have all the supernormal powers that you just explained by walking in water and all this, and going through mountain as though it's space, and reading people's mind and seeing, how they are reborn? Do you actually have this power or not? Then this Susima actually told Buddha, no, Bante, Then having known all these here the what divine eye, and then hear about past lives and hear people beings talking, having this psychic power, this divine eye, divine ear, So do you actually have all this or not? You see, then uh, so the Buddha says, no, I thought you already explained to you and you already seen the five aggregates, right? As having this non-self nature, right? Uh, so so even if you've seen that now, do you actually have all these supernormal powers and do you actually dwell, you know, touching, the basis of arupa, with your kaya, do you actually remain, do you abide and remain, in contact, with these bases through your kaya or not, Then this Susima said, no, Bante. So just now, Susima, didn't you make the declaration without having attained any of these dhammas? So what the Buddha is trying to tell Susima is that you have seen the Dhamma, but does not necessarily mean that you have the psychic powers and the supernormal powers, which may be developed, through strong samadhi, but because they're liberated by wisdom, they are the five spiritual faculties, the panya is strongest, but not the samadhi. They actually are liberated by wisdom because they just contemplated, the five aggregates, in the jhana and also the qualities of the arupas, and to look at the non-self nature in all these attainments and jhanas, So even if you have realized the Dhamma in that way, it does not mean that you have the supernatural powers, It does not mean, just does not mean that. So then this Susima, said, oh, he threw himself down at the head, with his head at the Buddha's feet, and said, oh, sorry, Buddha, blessed one, Bante, I've actually, made a transgression, So, and the Buddha then said, okay, however much pain the man will experience for that reason, Susima, the going forth is, of a thief of the Dhamma in this world, thought Dhamma and this is still more painful as a result, But because you have your because you see your transgression and such, and make amends in accordance with Dhamma, we accept your confession, which means the Buddha actually then forgave, Susima, and the Susima is a cause for growth in the Dhamma and discipline for noble ones, seeing a transgression, So actually the Buddha then say, if first thing you must actually, acknowledge that you made a transgression, then from there you must actually learn, and make the resolution not to actually, make the transgression again. That's how the noble ones in the noble one discipline actually grow in the Dhamma, So the Buddha's then admonish Susima, So from this sutta itself, isn't it very clear, that it does not necessarily mean that the arahants will actually have super normal powers or psychic powers or divine eye, right? So because simply because their faculty of wisdom is very strong, but they do not actually remain in contact, with that base, for example, whether it's jhana or whether it is actually arupas, even if they attain, for example, the wisdom, liberated by wisdom, they may attain the four jhanas and they contemplate, but they do not actually remain in contact with the jhanas, through the kaya, and of course the arupas as well, they do not remain in contact with the arupas through the kaya, So which means they do not abide, in those either jhana or arupa attainments. They do not abide, in those attainments, and also jhanas. They basically just they enter, and they attain the jhanas. They contemplate the five aggregates, and that's it, And they are able to see penetrate the Dhamma in terms of the non-self nature of the five aggregates, as well as conditioned phenomena. But it does not mean that they will necessarily have the psychic powers, which are developed, through high levels of concentration, right? So that part, also we need to be very clear in terms of the different types of arahant. So from this, many sutras I shared with you, we can see that there are many types uh, of arahants, depending on the temperaments as well as strengths and the fortes of the spiritual faculties. Of course, like I said, the sada virya sada virya sati, must always be there. You must have, in terms of the what do you call that? In terms of the faith, sada virya, the energy must be there. The mindfulness must always be there. But in terms of samadhi and panya, this is where there's a differentiating factor, in terms of whether you are liberated, in both ways, Ubato Baga Vimuta, or if you're actually, Panya Vimuta, it's actually wisdom liberated, where, you actually contemplate just wisdom, but you don't, abide, or remain in contact, with your kaya, in respect of the arupas, or even the jhanas as well. You don't remain in contact, you don't actually remain in contact or abide, in those lah. So uh, those are the two, but of course, in terms of those who are still trainees, the body witness, the kaya saki, there's also the liberated by attain to view, and liberated by faith, so these are all the sekas, the trainees, and of course, the kaya saki, who is actually the body witness, the samadhi and the panya faculties are strong, whereas actually for the deliberated by faith and the attain to view, so this is actually where they are actually strong in panya, so, and they do not actually remain in contact, with the either the arupas, or the jhanas, either through their kaya, through their mind, so they do not actually abide in them, but they actually contemplate the five grades in the jhanas or the arupas, but they do not abide in those high level of high level of samadhi, So that is where, we need to also understand the different kinds of enlightened beings, and how you should actually cater your concentration, for example, when you do anapanasati, once you are actually gone into this very serene stage, of composure, and you open up, your six sense bases, through this open mindfulness, you actually open, your six sense bases, and then let the sense doors impinge on you, and then you see how your mind reacts to it, and then you contemplate it, through of course, through samatha first, and then through vipassana, then you actually see how these five aggregates arise through causes and conditions, and how they actually dependently arisen, codependent arising. Then from there, you'll be able to see the wisdom, right? Using the wisdom faculty, you're able to see the intrinsic nature of anatta, non-self nature. That's where the wisdom arises, So uh uh so if you actually just practice that, and you focus more on the wisdom part, then perhaps then you'll be going into this panya vimutti, liberated by wisdom, or you can be going into this attain to view, but you're not embodied, but you're not actually kaya saki, so you're actually focusing more on the wisdom faculty, but of course, some, even after they actually contemplate this, they actually want to go into higher levels of samadhi by using anapanasati, or other forms of samatha meditation. They want to go higher up, to 4 stages, 4 jhanas, and all the way to arupas. Then you can also become, both ways liberated, and you abide in those arupas, and remain in contact with these bases arupas through your kaya, or you can become kaya saki, where you're also strong in this samadhi, so that's how, we can actually understand, in terms of the different ways of this practice, depending on your own temperaments, and doesn't necessarily mean that, in the practice of the Dhamma, you must necessarily have psychic powers or divine eyes, in order for you to become an arahant, So we can see from Susima Sutta, that's actually very true. And of course, the other thing is the dry eye arahant does not seem to be supported by the suttas here, right? You need to have jhanas, and this is consistent with the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, where under right samadhi, the Buddha explained very clearly, is any of the 4 jhanas, So if you actually say that you can become an arahant without the jhanas, then of course, it's not quite in line with that. But of course, there are some who teach jhanas are not necessary, because their notion of jhana is actually different from the sutta jhana. They believe the notion of jhana is what the Buddha taught is actually the Visuddhi Magga jhana, where you actually see the light, the nimitta and all this, and you enter into nimitta, and in the jhana itself, you're totally cut off, from the um, uh, perceptions of forms, and sensory perceptions are all gone, and you are like totally uh, uh, oblivious into what's happening around you, in jhana, which is like totally different from what the Buddha taught, in the sutta about jhanas, where you are fully aware, of the five, of your sense doors, and you are able to actually contemplate the five aggregates while in jhana, So, uh, so that's also a big the issue here, where, a lot of people have this notion about, oh, jhana is not required because they subscribe to this Visuddhimagga jhana. But if you actually understand, that the jhana taught by the Buddha is not that, then you understand that, jhana is actually required, in any of the four stages, even become a sotapanna, you need to have, jhana where you are able to have this composure to understand what the Buddha taught about the Four Noble Truths, in terms of how craving arises, how the five aggregates arise through codependent arising, the Four Noble Truths itself, and how it's supposed to be eradicated, the Noble Eightfold Path. All these, you need to have the composure and clarity of mind to understand, If you don't have the samadhi or the jhana, it's very difficult for you to even to penetrate to become a sotapanna. So that's why we need to be very careful, what the Buddha taught in the suttas about jhana, and do not confuse that, with the Visuddhimagga jhana, which I agree, is not necessary, it's not necessary, for that sort of jhana, because definitely the Buddha never taught about entering into nimittas and become like, totally cut off from the sense doors, five sense doors and all this. The Buddha never taught that. So we need to be very clear. That's why, the jhanas are always important, So maybe the dry eye arahants they mentioned here is actually in respect of the commentaries and in respect of Visuddhimagga. But once you actually go back to the suttas, definitely jhanas required. So, I've already explained all the 3 points here, and I hope this will actually give you some understanding, in terms of the different types of the enlightened beings, and how you should practice, so that it will guide you, towards that direction, with better clarity, how you should practice, and and when someone asks you, like if you don't have the jhanas, are you sure that you can actually become an arahant? If you don't have, if you or you can practice without jhanas, you can become arahant. So a lot of these questions are you need to be equipped, with the knowledge first, like for example, if you want to do a business, or you must have the working capital, right? So before you embark on the meditation, you must have all these um this working capital for your business of meditation. You must have all this knowledge, otherwise you will be actually like being swung here and there, and you don't know where you are moving to, and some people tell you, no lah, wisdom, liberation, it is the only way lah, there's no way that you can practice through samadhi, and reaching all these jhanas and arupas, not necessary. Then you need to be very clear. Actually, there's also the upato vaga mimuti, right? There's also both ways liberated, but it's just that those liberated by wisdom, they are not strong in they look, their faculty of wisdom is strong, so they contemplate it, but they don't necessarily have to abide in those high levels of samadhi. So you need to be very clear on this, and also in terms of the different the trainees, how their faculties itself, how they train, towards the towards liberation. So that also give you an idea, so that you give you a very solid foundation, and as you actually progress towards practicing the Buddha's spiritual path, and before reaching the ultimate goal, which is nibbana. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ghatikara Loo, for today's sharing. Let us dedicate those merits accrued to all beings seen and unseen. Akka satta chabummata deva naga mahiddika punyantang anumoditwa chiram rakkantu loka sasanang ettavata cha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe buddha sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Idang me Nyatinang hotu sukita hontunya tayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontunya tayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontunya tayo. Imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu ya vanidbana pattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching and staying back.